Introduction to Deuteronomy. Author Moses. However, Joshua probably recorded Moses' death in Deuteronomy chapter 34. Date written between 1410 and 1395 BC. Time span 1 to 2 months. Title is derived from the Greek word Deuteronomon, which means second law giving. Background. The Tanakh concludes with the fifth and final book of Moses. Deuteronomy begins at the end of Israel's 40-year period in the wilderness, when the new generation is preparing to enter the promised land, Canaan, where written on the plains near the Jordan River in Moab, due east of Jericho. To whom? To the new generation of Israelites. Content. A number of years have passed since the law was given at Mount Sinai to the parents of these Israelites, but that generation has since died in the wilderness except Caleb and Joshua, and this new generation needs to learn how to develop a proper relationship with God. Thus, 3 farewell sermons to Israel are given by the 120-year-old Moses just prior to his death, and the appointment of Joshua as his successor takes place. These addresses challenge the people to live their future in faith and obedience, and as they review their past, moral and legal regulation are expanded on, and the 10 Commandments are repeated. Key words: remember, covenant, obedience. Moses gives constant encouragement to the Israelites to remember their original covenant with the God of the patriarchs, who freed them from Egyptian bondage and sustained them through the wilderness. The only proper response for such an undeserving people is obedience to God without reservation. Theme: There is but one true God. Obedience brings blessing, disobedience brings punishment. Genuine love for God is evident by holy living and by love for others. God's power and faithfulness can be depended on during our times of need. When we teach our children to fear the Lord and keep his commandments. Deuteronomy chapter 6. Outline: Moses' first sermon, review of Israel's history. Deuteronomy chapter 1 verse 1 through Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 43. Number 2, Moses' second sermon, review of the law. Deuteronomy chapter 4 verses 44 through Deuteronomy chapter 11 verse 32. Application of the law. Deuteronomy chapter 12 verse 1 through Deuteronomy chapter 26 verse 19. Blessings and cursings. Deuteronomy chapter 27 verse 1 through Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 68. Number 3, Moses' third sermon, renewal of Israel's covenant. Deuteronomy chapter 29 verse 1 through Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 20. Number 4, the appointment of Joshua as Moses' successor. Deuteronomy chapter 31 through Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 43. And number 5, Moses' final word and death. Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 44 through Deuteronomy chapter 34 verse 12. May the Lord add a blessing to the introduction of the book of Deuteronomy.